BELAHCENE from Batna University. I would like first to thank the organizers of this event for giving me the chance to be part of it. My presentation is entitled Too Many Representations, Too Many Images, the Role of Postmodern Fiction Writers in Undermining Media's Spectacle. In fact, the Bush administration's war on terror was a war on and over images. In the days and weeks following the events of September 11th, the media relied so heavily on images in its coverage of the scene. Frederick Jameson denounced the media for orchestrating a dissociation of sensibility through countless unrealistic visuals. Similarly, Jean Baudrillard accused the media of taking the events of 9/11 hostage through an exploitation of images, and Jean Didion maintained that through an endless loop of video and photo images, the media has systematically leached the events of their history and meaning. In general, the public opinion about the war on terror depended largely on the Bush administration's ability to disseminate desirable images and to suppress undesirable ones. And at the same time, media has turned the attacks into an immense spectacle. Social and literary critics, as well as fiction writers, have become concerned about not only the manipulated versions the media orchestrates, but also about defamiliarizing people from the innumerable visuals fossilized by the media. This presentation thus attempts to highlight the way post-9/11 fictional works demonstrate media's attempts to alternate social discourse as well as critical thinking and impose ingenious indoctrination. The targeted novel in this presentation is Paul Auster's Man in the Dark, and despite being one of his least artistically convincing works due to its explicitness of ideas, sentimentalism, and attempt to be in tune with the current political themes, the novel is more of a rhizomatic work that deals with desperate issues like postmodern alienation, American and Jewish identity, mobility and traveling, the American dream and exceptionalism, and most importantly, ontological questions like language and reality, as well as life and art. Beginning the very first person narration in the novel, Auguste Brill says, "I'm alone in the dark, turning the world around in my head as I struggle through another bout of insomnia, another white night in the great American wilderness." Though the beginning of the passage points out to personal crisis and illness of an aging man, his last words ironically imply a critique of the nature of contemporary American society, its culture of consumerism, and the failure of the American dream. The latter resulted not only in the divorce and to a certain extent the financial instability of the narrator's daughter and his granddaughter, but also in the brutal assassination of the boyfriend of the narrator's granddaughter. More precisely, this presentation examines the depiction of Paul Auster in his novel of the lure of the media and its consequent devastating impact. An example of this concern is through the character of Titus, or Small Titus, and to a lesser degree of Katia. So Titus Small, a character who functions as the absent center of Auster's novel, leaves for Iraq in 2006 to drive a truck for an American contracting company. He goes to Iraq, he explains, in order to do something that makes him feel less safe and more like he is part of history. In 2007, Titus is captured and held hostage by captors who stream live video coverage of his confinement for an international television audience. After Titus' shipping company refuses to pay a ransom of $10 million, he is viciously murdered on live video. His head is chopped off with a hatchet and his eyes are stabbed out. So while he wanted to be part of history, he ends up as part of a series of images. Quickly, in order to escape the monotony of life, Titus launches for spatial freedom, a mediated romanticization of the journey. But again, traveling, movement and mobility as mediated symbols of freedom and democracy are turned into a metaphor of arrest, passivity and inescapability, of violence and disintegration simulated by greed and yearning for money, as represented by Titus, who cannot see the moral implication of his involvement in the Iraq War. As such, Titus is an after effect, a kind of aftershock, a victim of the war on terror instead. How is that? Titus goes to Iraq in order to escape the monotony of a life that is not worthy of the camera's focus. When he says that he wants to discover what it feels like to be part of history, what he really means is that he wants to experience the thrill of being at the epicenter of the media's notice, worthy of being turned into a spectacle. His tragic ending challenges the aestheticized reality media presents to people. Titus is lured to Iraq by the pull of the spectacle, and then he is subsumed by it, objectified and dehumanized by the awfulness of his mediated death. In our final image of him, he is defaced and bloodied, dispossessed of his subjectivity. I quote, "The other man removes the hood from Titus' head, and then a third man takes hold of Titus' long red hair and carries the head closer to the camera. Blood is dripping everywhere. Titus is no longer human. He has become the idea of a person and not a person, a dead bleeding thing, une nature morte." End of the quote. Titus is now only a thing, an image mutilated and defiled, a victim of iconoclasm, a symbol to be consumed, circulated and then propagandized by the media. Also in his Man in the Dark, aims to show how images have the potential to counteract the effect of the spectacle. After Titus' death, his girlfriend, Katia, uses cinematic images to escape her pain. She and her grandfather spend their days and nights watching foreign film together. Katia is numbed by the mindless passivity of the experience. Eventually, Katia's grandfather realizes that she is using this obsessive movie watching as a form of self-medication, a homeopathic drug to anesthetize herself. But it is more than that. As Katia ultimately admits, it is the images on screen that provide the escape she craves. I quote, "I need the images. I need the distraction of watching other things than the images of the killing of her boyfriend." It is the image of Titus' death that she desperately seeks to forget by burying it under the mind-numbing weight of more images. For Katia, the only antidote to the spectacle's awful power is to consume more spectacle. The tragic ending of Titus and Katia's conduct challenge the aestheticized reality media presents to people and warn against the overwhelming culture of consumerism. By focusing on characters whose lives are devastated by the lure of the media, the novel provides the tools to more effectively interrogate images in order to better see what they obscure. If, as Mitchell argues, the primary weapon of terror is the image, then we must be equipped to see beyond the mere symbolism of images of terror and at the same time be ready to question our own use of images in our fight against terror. The novel is successful in undermining the spectacle because it doesn't simply point out the lack of reality in images, rather in recognizing and calling attention to both the unreality of images and their operational reality. The novel deconstructs the processes through which images function both as material traces of history and as metaphorical signs of social discourse. At the same time, the novel shows how literature can act as a counterforce to the spectacle, by defamiliarizing people from visuals, by providing a space to respond wisely to the aesthetics of an age dominated by images, and to trigger sustained dialogue as well as critical thinking rather than passive spectatorship. And thank you for your attention.